Good afternoon. It's Lawrence here, Mosaic Workshops, and I hope you're all well and can hear me okay. Let's just have a look and see. Okay, this sort of planned one was something that I wanted to go through for a while. Or not. Well, it's something that's sort of updating the rules, but without actually, let's just see. Sorry, I've got to just check that I'm coming through all right on the other one. Sometimes that's an awful phone picture. Okay, so this was something that I didn't think I'd be doing, but it's updating the rules, not in the content, but in the the way that they're presented and the way that we look at them, which should hopefully help you to learn, help you to improve what you're doing and improve your understanding. Now, so why do we have the rules? Why do we have the rules in Roman mosaics? It's because it's what makes a mosaic Roman. And they had them because it would avoid any discordant areas. And also what's come across to me, it does give a certain amount of consistency to the way that people, the way that these artisans, these craftspeople must have learned, because you were taking slaves, and the sure fair percentage of them would have been slaves, and even the freedmen that were doing it, the Roman citizens, the citizens of the provinces, wouldn't have had any formal education really. They worked with their hands, therefore they were manual labourers. So those that were coming in would just have been doing that. So if you have these rules, if you have this way of setting, then you're going to have that sort of fairly consistent approach to it. Now, what makes the difference is the standard of work, and this is where the problems come in, because I've been saying now, up till now, look at the originals and work from them. Even in the kits that I produce, with the teaching that I've done, I've sort of said be working from, be looking at the originals as you work and as you improve your skills. Which, yes, it's right to a certain extent, but think of it this way, that you're looking at one mosaic's standard of work. Then you go and do another mosaic, you're looking at another standard of work, and they're going to differ in their approach to how they do the rules. Now, these rules, those of you who've gone through them know there's nothing complex about them, but there is going to be the slight differences with them. So if we look at it this way, if you were learning to drive, you wouldn't learn to drive by going out on a really busy motorway or a 5-lane freeway for your first lesson, because there's too much going on. There's too much for you to have to think about. So the analogy is with this: if you're learning the rules to make a Roman mosaic, then you really are, by working from the originals to learn the rules, you're learning at different standards of application, different, the methods of work are going to differ. The method of work that I use is going to be different from the method of work that somebody else uses. When I recently, this commission that we did, that was just under 120 square meters, I needed a team of what, it was about nearly 20 people involved, so they all had to work at that same standard. 4th century Romano-British mosaics, everybody had to work there. No one up there, no one down there, everybody working to that same standard, simply because the mosaics that we were working on, so they all had to do that. So again, what I'm saying is when you're doing these, when you're learning the rules, if you're learning by keep looking at different standards on every mosaic you do, this is where it can become a little bit confusing. So when go back to the analogy of learning to drive, you go to learn, you start learning to drive on a quiet road. So you're still doing it, you're still driving, but you're doing it in a very much quieter environment. So the same with the rules. Now, what happened was I started doing some other mosaics, some different types of mosaics, but still applying the rules. I look at the Norse Celtic patterns. I looked at some of the Scythian tattoos that were found on the mummies, really sort of like 6th, 7th century AD, and thought, well, how would you interpret those in mosaic? So you'd still have to have that. It's not a modern mosaic, it's interpreting somebody else's work. So you have to make sure that you apply these rules consistently, and you're still using them, you're still creating it as a craft. But there are sort of slight differences. And then what I was doing while I was doing these mosaics, I realized that I was applying my own standard of work, which if someone else were doing that pattern, doing a pattern, say a Celtic knot or whatever, a Celtic pattern, they could do it. Now, if they were applying the rules, they could work at a different standard, slightly different, and you would see that in there. So that just got me thinking about how we learn the rules and how we present them when we're doing them for a Roman mosaic. So let's just give a quick refresh. We'll go over to the share screen. And okay, this is the new board that I made. So still exactly the same rules, but a slightly different presentation. Now let's just go and drop down to here. This was a new, what I term as guiding principle. I use guiding principles because some people not say it shouldn't be andamento, some say it shouldn't be rules, some things. So guiding principles, rules. If you work for me, then it's rules. But everybody has maybe to call it the same name, slightly different name. So we've got 8 rules. Number 1 and number 2 are making a neat mosaic. The second section, the second group, is 3 to 5, which is the 3 main rules that create the flow in your work. Then, slightly different, the 6 rule 6 and 7 is how you develop your eye for your work. And the 4th section, if you like, is using a method of work. So let's go back over those. And we'll take this down. So let me just see if we can get it all in. Okay, so we start on the the left. You've got your center left. I do know them. I do know them off by heart. I didn't put the numbers on these, and it just threw me. Middle, center, left. See here, we have size, and the white is the correct area. The red is the non-correct. So if we just go in to that one, so we're center left side here, you can see we're keeping the same. And the main thing was this, and again, this is a problem using square cut tesserae, is you've got to try and get rid of that regularity. And it's slightly different working with these squares, but it's good in a way because when you're using square tesserae, you can't hide anything. When you're using irregular hand cut tesserae, that can hide a multitude of sins. So it's very much more apparent what we're doing. But the drawback with that, with the machine cut tesserae, is you've got to try and lose that machine cut. And you can see that the way that I've set these, and you can see that the way that I've done some half cuts, some 3/4 cuts, just to break up the line. But see where these triangles are at the end, you can see that they're a good size. Now go to the red one area below it, you can see there's lots of fragments. I've exaggerated this for effect. See lots of fragments there shoved in. This is very discordant, and this is very much very disruptive. And it's not just the size, it's the contrast. So if we go on this slope, this diagonal line here right on the left in the red, you can see there's a full size, about a quarter cut, if that. So it's not just the size difference, it's the contrast where you have the very small to the full size. Going further down, now we've got the spacing. So spacing in a Roman mosaic, you have spacing because if you pushed everything right up tight, it's a lot more cutting. Now, you will see some Roman mosaics, they do have that. They are very tightly in, but you're always going to get gaps with it, not just because of the cut of the material, but obviously the speed of your work there. You can't, if you're trying to fit everything in together, it's going to take you a lot longer. There's a lot more cutting. So if we go down the bottom left here, you can see the spacing, where the spacing is inconsistent. So again, it's not just the effect, it's the inconsistency of the application that creates a problem. So on the left here side, we've got rules 1 and 2, size and spacing, which are making a neat mosaic. Now, if we go to the center, top, everybody should know this one, borderline. Up the top, I've used the red on this one just to show that I needed that contrast for the correct, but obviously you can see that line there where the borderline is used between the color change. And you can see how any triangles are needed, whether a diagonal or any curved or any off-center line. You need the triangle cuts, putting the borderline in, pushing those away. Now, just below that, you can see without the borderline, and that is a very sharp line. So that's that discordant effect that you're wanting to avoid. Going down another one, here we have Keystone. Let's move that over there. This is the rough copy, a better one there. But you can see on the white section here, keystones are used to allow the curve to flow, whereas below it we use triangles. The triangles break up the line. Below that, you have the one where half cuts have been used, what I term fanning, and it's an easy thing to do because it just seems to make sense to allow that to create that curve using those. But you see, it's the difference again. It still disrupts that line. Last one of this section is the convergence. So you in the white here, you've got 3 lines going to 2 lines, going to 1 line. Below that in the red, you've got 1 line that stays the same, and then the lines on either side just get smaller and smaller. The triangle, a triangle cut signifies an end to a line. But obviously here the lines aren't ending, or they shouldn't do. In the white, they don't. They converge. But on the bottom, because you use triangle cuts there, the top and bottom line, the triangle there does signify that line has ended, where in fact it should have kept going. So You've got size and spacing is making the neat mosaic. You have the center, which are these 3 mosaics of borderline, keystone, and convergence. Now, this is over to the second last section. Now, channeling. The white one, you can see the top right here, the top right white section. They are all offsets. There are no lines. There are no, as you see on the red section here, there's no vertical, horizontal lines that you can see. Sometimes people refer to these as grout lines, but basically that's what you don't want, because again, this is very flat. This is it totally takes the depth out of it, and in the next one you'll get that same effect again. Now, I've exaggerated with the sizes here. We're looking at the right hand side with the white here. This is more with hand cut material. So you're going to get this more if you're cutting everything by hand. You're going to get a certain amount of tesserae that are rectangular shape. Now, if you used a lot of these together, in the red section there, you can see you make something which is like a brick wall. Now, a brick wall, visually speaking, is very flat. It has no depth to it, and depth is what you want, particularly where you're having large areas of these tesserae being set, and the effect, if you're using like this brick wall, is very flat. There's no depth to it. This is, you sometimes see in modern copies of a Roman mosaic. I don't know if it's rectangular cuts are easier, that they find them easier to produce or something, but you see that there, and that again, that flattens it. So 6 and 7, rule 6 and 7, channeling and the brick wall effect, are about creating these, so you can create this depth and keep this regularity out of the mosaic. Now, the last one, line end, it's not that easy to see here. Okay, we're looking on the right hand side. So you've got these, the top, you have this going from the right on your screen to the left, where there is a vertical line, which could be a borderline or something. You see, these are all the sizes. We're going back to the sizes. There's not too much inconsistency with the sizes there. Now look at the bottom red example. These lines coming up to the vertical line, because you could have someone who's not that they haven't got their eye in. What happens is they could get near to the end of the line and they just have space for a half cut, so they put that in. They do the next line right up to there. Not quite used to it, so they have another small space. They stick a 5mm, and then you end up with that sort of line of the 5mm test, right? The half cuts or whatever right at the end. So you apply the correct method of work for this. What you do is, you go, when you get near to the end, when you get near to that vertical line, you say you're about sort of 5-6 tesserae away, then you jump over to set your end one, and then you'd work back from there. So you'd set the one by the vertical line and work back from there. So if you do have any of these smaller cuts, they actually get lost in there. So this last one is developing your eye. They're just there. And let's take that. Using a method of work, and that allows the mosaic to be a lot more consistent in there. Now, method of work is something that you build up your own. There are certain things that I do with people that helps, but method of work isn't the rules. Method of work is just a particular way that you're working. So Sorry to be late. Comments that's all right. So this is just a quick go through. So what I'm saying on this, let's get this back. Me, yeah, that'll do. Okay, what I'm saying with this really is you learn the rules and you make something that is Roman, isn't necessarily Roman. It could be a jug, it could be an apple, it could be nothing too complex, but you do that mosaic and you apply the rules. You apply the gold standard. You do really neat work, because we all do neat work because we're modern, we're educated. We have that we have that built in to our psyche. It was somehow to do with how we've been educated, how we've been taught. We are real neat freaks in comparison to the Romans. So you learn the rules without reference to the Roman mosaics. You learn the rules and how to make them as a mosaic, to apply them into a mosaic. It could be a cartoon car. It could be a picture of Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. You are actually creating your mosaic, so you can see it, you can read it. Now, when you've done that, however many you don't need to do, when you start looking at the Roman mosaics, and then you can discern the different styles, you can discern the different standards of work, and that should make it a lot easier to actually look at what you're seeing. And then when you get to the point of seeing the rules and seeing where they're not, it's made much easier because you've applied them on a fresh sheet, if you like. So I will be going over this again. I will be doing that. It's just something I wanted to get out. The new one, another one's going to be on at 10 o'clock by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. And that will just go through these again. That will be, and I'll give you the opportunity. You'll be able to get a download of that new card, and you'll be able to get a short ebook on it. Plus, there's the options for some courses as well. But really, it is about being able to learn these rules in an environment where you're not getting confused, you're not getting distracted. Then when you go into that environment, when you're looking at the Roman mosaics, that will make it a lot easier because you already have that foundation skill there. Yeah, so someone saying this is very helpful. I'm not sure why I would have caught out all the areas had you not pointed them out. So this is why sort of, I think you just need this sheet in front of you. You need this. These are how the rules are. Now apply them to something. Now create something with them. Then you can see. And then when you go and look at a Roman mosaic, then you can start to see, because it can be very confusing. It can be very hard. That example of where I pointed, I mentioned to a curator of one of the museums about how they had this borderline, about they had these rules all the time in Roman mosaics, and she said that no, they didn't. They weren't in all of the mosaics. They were in a lot of them, but they weren't in all of them. And she provided me evidence with an image of a Roman mosaic which had the rules, which had the borderlines there if you knew what to look for. Okay, it's nothing magical. It's nothing, no arcane knowledge or anything like that. They taught slaves how to do this. But if you learn borderline without the distraction of looking at different standards of work, then when you see it, then when you go and look at the Roman mosaics, then you can see why certain areas don't have that borderline, but you can see the borderline. This should help you a lot more. So any comments at all, please let me know. But let's say this should be up by 10 a.m. tomorrow. There'll be another one that you can see and go through there, and a chance to download the new card for your own use as well. Okay, thanks very much.